Right. Hello again, and welcome to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. I'm joined by the Chief Agricultural Editor of SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch, as well as 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director Ryan Young. I'm Doug Falconer, Agriculture Director at GX94 in Yorkton. And Kevin, once again, we get you this week in the Cabri area in southwestern Saskatchewan. Can you give us an update on how spring seeding is going for you there?
Well, we've had some showers and in and out of the field, but today, as we're talking Friday, it's a wonderful day. The sun is shining, temperature is nice, the wind isn't blowing. People are going hard seeding and spraying to make some progress. For this area, it feels late. I know a lot of areas have hardly started. This area is probably around 60% done, I would think, would be my guess, but people would really like to make some huge strides while the weather is good right now.
How about your way, Ryan, in the Regina area?
There's definitely some air seeders going about here in the Regina area. I also did some traveling around the province this week up in the Raymore area as part of the 620 CKRM Country Cookout. We visited the Horvath family up there. They said that they're starting a little bit later than normal, but they've had an abundance of moisture, so they've been able to make some seeding progress, about 2,500 acres so far. And then we went in the opposite direction in the southeast to the Creelman area, where we visited Tom Davis and his family, and seeding is underway for them. And he mentioned that the rain that we had on Thursday was actually timely for him because where he farms, the topsoil was starting to get a little bit dry. So the rain is kind of helping him out there. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of my travels here. Doug, what's it looking like over in the Yorkton area?
Well, we've been having rain on and off all day today here, this being Friday, of course, so there will be nobody moving in the field today. I'm sure there was some seeding yesterday. We took GX94 supper in the field out to the Springside area, which is about 15-20 minutes northwest of Yorkton on Wednesday, to the Derek Burns farm, and they'd had about 1,000 acres seeded last week before, of course, that storm hit, rain and snow over the Victoria Day long weekend. So they hadn't done anything since. That was as of Wednesday night. They were hoping to fire up again Thursday morning. So they should have at least had one day of seeding before today's rain rolled in again. So looks like a bit of a setback here. Not a whole lot of rain, but just enough to keep guys out of the field, I think. Then, of course, some other items this week. Ryan, you had a chance to speak with Jocelyn Vlestuck from the Canadian Wheat Research Coalition, and they were talking about a plant breeding meeting.
Yeah, that's right. There were some stakeholders and various organizations, even some officials from Ag Canada and crop development commissions that met just to kind of discuss the future of what plant breeding research is going to look like. And that comes as Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada announced their pending closure of several research sites across the country. We know very well that the Scott and Indian Head locations are among those that are going to be closing at some point in the next 12 months. So they came up with like a general vision of what they wanted to do moving forward, as well as some general principles to kind of support said vision. Things like delivering superior field-ready varieties, technology-driven innovation, ensuring investment is stable, long-term, and there's a return on investment, attracting investment and talent, enabling competition and collaboration, and supporting a regulatory commercialization system that is responsible to the needs of farmers. So that's kind of the broad-based principles supporting that vision. And she said the finer details are being worked on as we speak. So that's kind of where things are going moving forward here. The ball is rolling overall here, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes, especially when it comes to Ag Canada in terms of, are they going to have new research sites come up? Are we going to see a change in ownership in the current sites or something else? That kind of remains to be seen.
Kevin, your thoughts? I'm sure those research farms will be hopefully continued on in some form by someone else, perhaps.
My guess is that those research farms at Scott and Indian Head will end up being owned by the provincial government, but that's just a guess. I'm a little disappointed with the Wheat Research Coalition with such broad general principles. Easy to agree on broad general principles. What's needed is a more specific plan than that. They've got a long way to go to roll it into anything actionable. So it's a pretty slow start, in my humble opinion. I thought they could go further and come out with something a lot more concrete, but we have to hope that's still to come.
Also this week, the federal agriculture minister Heath McDonald made a trip to Saskatchewan. He started in Saskatoon on Tuesday, visited the University of Saskatchewan, met with a number of groups there, and then headed to Regina for Wednesday with meetings with provincial agriculture minister David Merritt, as well as the grand opening of the Cargill canola crushing plant. Ryan, you were following that story pretty closely.
Yeah, unfortunately, you didn't have an opportunity to meet with the media here in Regina. So in one way, it was a little bit disappointing, but he did meet with reporters in Saskatoon while he was at the University of Saskatchewan, excuse me. Some of the things that they talked about included the next policy framework and the ongoing consultations around that, as well as current issues, including what we just talked about with the AAFC cuts to the research sites and what can be done in the future moving forward. And that's kind of the position that he took, as kind of a future focus at this point, among other things as well. And I guess one thing to add, he met with the provincial agriculture minister, David Merritt, on the same topics as well while he was in Regina. I plan on following up with both ag ministers just to see if I can get additional details on what they talked about and among other issues that are currently facing the ag sector.
Kevin, your thoughts on Heath McDonald's visit to Saskatchewan this week?
Well, I think it's great that he comes and consults. I would characterize him as something of a lightweight minister in the cabinet, but still he is the ag minister and seems to be doing his due diligence and talking and consulting with people. From the interview clips I heard from in Saskatoon, it sounds like he hasn't left the door open even a crack to changing their decision on the Ag Canada research stations. It really sounds like that is a fait accompli, even though the Ag Committee, the Commons Ag Committee, recommended that those cuts be reversed. It doesn't sound like the government is going to do that. And strange to me that there was no media availability in Regina, maybe just a scheduling thing, but you'd think that you'd want to talk to any media outlet that wanted to talk to you while you're in the province, because he only gets to the province on an occasional basis.
And of course, it was a short week this week with the Victoria Day Monday holiday in there. So the Manitoba crop report was pushed back by actually about a day and a half. It ended up coming out the same day as the Saskatchewan crop report. The Manitoba crop report says 37% of spring seeding is done in that province. Obviously, the lion's share is in the southwest and the southeast portions of the province. I know I spoke to the Manitoba agriculture guy from Roblin, and he said basically Russell and Dauphin in the northwest part of Manitoba are the areas that have seen the most activity, but it's still in the probably lower single digits. And he says further north in Swan River up to the Paw, especially the Paw, virtually nothing has been done yet. Much like Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan crop report came out 29% of the crop in the ground. And Ryan, that was something that you followed up on.
Yeah, the bulk of the progress again was made in the southern parts. So the southwest at 55%, the southeast around 41%. Every other region except the northeast made a little bit more progress compared to the previous week. I remember the West Central around 11% or 16% rather. Northwest is in the double digits as well. East Central, I think, is around 11% complete. and the Northeast is really lagging behind still at 3%. But again, that's because they're still dealing with some flooding conditions as well as excessive moisture. So hopefully with the weather forecast for the next few days, they'll be able to get that much needed hot weather to dry things out and get started with seeding. The other notable thing, I guess, in terms of the crop report is just the crop type progress. I believe it's pulses that are leading the way with field peas and lentils. They're about over the halfway point. Cereal crops not too far behind. A wide variety of crops are being put in the ground as we speak. And typically oil seeds, they're typically the last crop to kind of go in the ground, so they're a little bit behind, but I know they'll catch up nonetheless. Just remembering around the Regina area here, coming back home from one of the cookouts this week, that somebody claimed that there was a, excuse me, a what they described as a traffic stopping hailstorm right by Grand Coulee, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like, really, the weather conditions don't seem very conducive for, hail, but by the time I got to the area, I didn't see any evidence of hail whatsoever. So just kind of questioned that claim, but that was something noteworthy nonetheless.
Kevin, the latest numbers show both Saskatchewan and Manitoba well behind what they normally are for this time of year. I'm a little surprised that Manitoba's ahead of Saskatchewan to this point. I don't think that happens very often, but what are your thoughts on the numbers out there this week?
Yeah, things are lagging badly, and I saw somebody put the numbers together looking back the past years, and it's been many years, in I think over 10 years since our progress in Saskatchewan was this low at this date. But if the weather changes and stays warm, the numbers can change dramatically. I really think it's the East Central region and the Northeast region that are worrisome at this point, and really can't afford any more weather delays, or their situation will become worrisome indeed.
Also this week, Kevin, you provided us with a story about fertilizer prices and their availability and how it has become a little difficult, but it does sound like it will make crop prices rise.
That's an interesting theory, and it was David Delaney of a fertilizer company in the U.S. called Tafos, and he's a former chief operating officer of Potash Corp, so quite familiar with Saskatchewan. But the shortage of sulfur to make sulfuric acid needed in phosphate production, the shortage of sulfur as a fertilizer, those are not the ones that have received the most attention. Most of the attention has been centered on nitrogen availability. But here in Western Canada, we have nitrogen manufacturing. We do not have any phosphate manufacturing, and sulfur is brought in as well. So David Delaney is of the opinion that in some countries around the world, he says notably Brazil, the shortage and lack of availability of fertilizer, in addition to the high price, is going to reduce fertilizer use, therefore reducing crop yields. And he believes that that could be a tipping point and drive grain prices higher in the foreseeable future. Now, we'll see if this all comes to pass. I usually think that weather plays a bigger role, but I'm not sure we've ever seen a fertilizer availability issue so acute worldwide as the one we're seeing right now.
Also this week, Ryan, you had a story with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada about the April Drought Monitor report.
Yeah, it seems like they've resurrected that once again for the season here, from what I've noticed. And just kind of looking at it quickly, the map of the conditions as of April 30th, it looked like a lot of areas around Manitoba and Saskatchewan, that central and northern part, they don't have any drought conditions at all. As we've talked about with the rainfall and the precipitation that we've had recently. Even some parts of Alberta, too, don't have any drought conditions, although there is, some moderate to abnormally dry conditions in between Edmonton and Calgary, and even more pronounced in the southern part of Alberta, as well as southwestern Saskatchewan. But even in southwestern Saskatchewan at this point, it's abnormally dry to moderate drought conditions, which I guess for the southwest, better than expected, I guess, shall we say, considering we've seen the map before be in the severe drought category. So in a way, it's a step in the right direction nonetheless, with the cold temperatures and again, the precipitation kind of helping things out. But it's definitely something to watch in the months ahead here if those conditions continue to improve, or like Trevor Hadwin with Ag Canada said, doesn't take much to, kind of make things dire again.
Kevin, what do you think of this drought monitor report?
Well, unfortunately it's dated only up until the end of April. We've had a lot of precipitation since the end of April, so I think the trouble is that information is dated. I really like the topsoil moisture maps put out by the Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture, and if you look at topsoil moisture conditions, there's a lot of surplus, a lot of adequate. The areas with short or very short are a very small percentage of the total grain belt in Saskatchewan. I don't think we've seen that kind of positive moisture outlook in a long time. Now, I say positive because we're typically a rainfall shortage area. If you're in one of the areas of surplus moisture, you might not think it's all that rosy. But I don't think right now drought is the major concern in most areas. Now, you'll always find some pockets that are still dry, and you hate to exclude or disenfranchise producers in those areas. But by and large, this spring is looking really good from a moisture point of view as far as it being adequate. Just need to clean up the surplus moisture conditions and get seeding progressing in those areas.
All right, and finally, Kevin, you also provided us with a report from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's principal field crop report that was issued on Thursday. What were you able to glean from that?
I think the overall message for me is that between their April report and their May report, they've become much more bullish on the price of canola, up $40 a ton for new crop, and wheat up $20 a ton. And those are major crops in Saskatchewan. Many other crops were steady, and some dropped quite significantly. But the two major crops, canola and wheat, are actually looking quite bullish when Ag Canada does its analysis. And that would agree with the private analysis that is available from various sources as well. So we've two major grains moving in the right direction.
All right, well, that will do it for this week's edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director Ryan Young and the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com Kevin Hirsch, I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director Doug Falconer, saying so long until next time.